Objective of this presentation is as follows. To ensure that students or viewers are conscious of the approach that they should take in order to write an effective essay on a given past paper question. More specifically, Section B, Poetry section of the CSEC Paper 2 examination. Specific objectives of this presentation are as follows. 1. To make the viewers conscious of the approach that should be taken in analyzing January 2024 past paper question. 2. To highlight the issues that are embedded in the given poems alluded to in the question. How to tackle each aspect of the given question. To discuss the devices used in each of the poem and comment on their effectiveness in reference to the given question. And lastly, to provide students with a sample response to the given question. Question. January 2024 past paper question. Section B, Poetry. Suggested time 40 minutes. Answer one question in this section. And the question reads, God's grandeur and an African thunderstorm portray the power and wonder of nature. Write an essay in which you focus on the power and wonder of nature. For each poem, describe how the power and wonder of nature is portrayed. For one of the poems, you must also discuss one speaker's reaction to the power and wonder of nature. Finally, for each poem, you must examine one device that each poet uses to portray the power and wonder of nature. Total marks 35. Are you able to tackle this question? Let's see. CSEC English B examination January 2024. The disclaimer. The poem God's Grandeur is not on the CSEC 2023 to 2027 poetry list. Here's a reminder of the CSEC poems for 2023-2027, and they are as follows. 1. An African Thunderstorm. 2. Once Upon a Time. 3. Little Boy Crying. 4. West Indies, USA. 5. Sonnet composed upon Westminster Bridge. 6. Bird shooting season. 7. The woman speaks to the man who has employed her son. 8. It is the constant image of your face. 9. A lesson for Sunday. 10. A stone's throw. 11. Test match Sabina Park. 12. My parents. 13. Landscape Painter Jamaica. 14. Dulce et Decorum Est. 15. This is a dark time, my love. 16. Old Ig. 17. Mirror. 18. South. 19. Death Be Not Proud. And 20. Dreaming Black Boy. Those are the poems. Stated in previous videos, in order to tackle this question effectively, we need to rip the question apart, pull it apart. Yes, indeed. And when we pull it apart, this is what we'll get. And the three areas that you need to address in your essay response are as follows. 1. For each poem, describe how the power and wonder of nature is portrayed. 2. For one of the poems, you must also discuss one speaker's reaction to the power and wonder of nature. And finally, for each poem, you must examine one device that each poet uses to portray the power and wonder of nature. Are you able to tackle this essay question? Let's see. As stated in previous presentations, the introductory paragraph or the introduction should contain the following: 1. An attention getter or hook. 2. Reference to the poems that you will be utilizing in your response. And thirdly, a synopsis of the main issues that will be addressed in your essay. And here's a sample introductory paragraph for this question. Introductory paragraph. The sample introductory paragraph reads, God's magnificence is often displayed throughout creation. Within the poems God's Grandeur and An African Thunderstorm, the poets showcase the power and wonder of nature. Although these poems use varying techniques in their exploration, it is evident in each poem that nature is a dominant force that should not be toyed with.
Our channel is here to provide you with the latest news, tips, and tricks to help you succeed in school and beyond. By liking, sharing, subscribing, and telling a friend about our channel, you can stay up to date on all of our exciting content. From study hacks to career advice, we've got you covered. Not only will you benefit from our helpful videos, but you'll also be helping to grow our community of like-minded students who are dedicated to learning and growing together. So what are you waiting for? Hit that like button, share our videos with your friends, subscribe to our channel, and spread the word.
In order for you to write an effective essay on the given question and to have well-developed paragraphs displaying your knowledge and understanding of the poems An African Thunderstorm and God's Grandeur, you need to ensure that you understand the issues explored in these poems. Do you understand them? Now, God's Grandeur by Gerard Manley Hopkins. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. It will flame out like shining from shook foil.
It gathers to a greatness, like the ooze of oil crushed. Why do men then now not wreck his rod? Generations have trod, and all is seared with trade bleared, smeared with toil, and wears man's smudge and shares man's smell. The soil is bare now, nor can foot feel, being shod. And for all this, nature is never spent there, lives the dearest freshness deep down things, and though the last lights off the black west went, morning at the brown brink eastward, springs because the Holy Ghost over the bent world broods with warm breast and with, bright wings.
This poem explores God's magnificence or majestic splendor, which is displayed throughout creation nature. Even though God's presence is illuminating, like shining from shook foil, men continue to do as they please due to their preoccupation with trade. Thus causing the natural environment to become polluted, and all is shared with trade, blared, smeared with toil, shares man's smell. Regardless of all the pollutants in the environment, nature is never utterly destroyed. This is confirmed in the statement, nature is never spent. In the last 6 lines of this poem, God's indomitable spirit is seen in routine sunset, the last light of the back west, and sunrise, O morning at the brown brink eastward springs, thereby allowing us to conclude that though various generations have trod, they were not able and will not be able to destroy nature because of God's consuming and enduring presence throughout creation. Did you get that?
From the west clouds come hurrying with the wind turning sharply here and there, like a plague of locusts whirling, tossing up things on its tail like a madman chasing nothing. Pregnant clouds ride stately on its back, gathering to perch on hills like sinister dark wings. The wind whistles by, and trees bend to let it pass. In the village screams of delighted children, toss and turn in the din of the whirling wind, women, babies clinging on their backs dart about, in and out madly the wind whistles by whilst trees bend to let it pass. Clothes wave like tattered flags flying off to expose dangling breasts as jagged blinding flashes rumble, tremble and crack amidst the smell of fired smoke and the pelting march of the storm.
Poem An African thunderstorm, the title is used literally and metaphorically. Literally, there is a physical thunderstorm that will be occurring in Africa. Metaphorically, this storm represents the invasion of Africa by the colonizers from the west. It is quite apparent that the force of the wind of this literal storm was so powerful that the trees literally had to bend in submission. Similarly, the brutal force of the colonizers was so great that Africans or Africa had no other options but to surrender, and the trees bent to let it pass. Although the storm would have caused much destruction, mayhem, and upheavals, everyone did not perceive this. The children were oblivious of the impending danger of the storm. The statement, "screams of delighted children," signifies this. Their delight may have stemmed from the fact that they had never experienced a storm before. Thus, they were curiously excited, or in fact eager, to have that encounter. On the other hand, the Africans, due to this invasion, would have lost their identity. The image of the tattered flags confirms this. In essence, the Africans had to assimilate the mannerism of their colonizers, thereby abandoning their traditional culture. Did you get that? I trust you did. Examine the body paragraph for the first aspect of the given question, and the first aspect of the given question reads, "For each poem, describe how the power and wonder of nature is portrayed." And here are the samples. In the poem God's Grandeur by Gerard Hopkins Manley, nature is portrayed as possessing an indomitable spirit. The poet uses visual and auditory imagery to showcase the power and wonder of nature. This is confirmed in the line, "Nature is never spent," which implies that nature is never utterly destroyed or diminished as it replenishes itself. The world seemed to be dependent on nature's vibrancy. The poet directly and indirectly alludes to this when he commences the poem with the expression, "The world is charged with the grandeur of God." The use of the metaphoric expression "is charged" implies that the world is filled with the presence of the splendor of God. The world is somewhat hinged or dependent on God in the same way a battery is dependent on an electric charge to energize it. Similarly, in the poem An African Thunderstorm, the poet David Rubardari uses visual and auditory imagery to portray the power and wonder of nature. These images, trees bent to let it pass, wind whistled, screams, and tattered flags, all convey the idea that the force of the wind was strong, so powerful that the trees had no other option but to bend in submission and let it pass. In this poem, nature is portrayed as a destructive element. React to the power and wonder of nature. In the poem God's Grandeur, it is clear that the speaker is in awe of nature, so much so that he admires its resilience. And for all this, nature is never spent. The speaker is unable to fathom why men have somewhat been disobedient. Why then do men now not wreck his rod? This rhetorical question highlights the fact that the speaker is understandably shocked that men continues to pollute and destroy the environment with their preoccupation with trade, smeared with trade. An African Thunderstorm. In this poem, the speaker is cognizant of the destructive potential of nature, and so he or she submits to the elements of nature by allowing it to pass. The speaker is aware that he or she is defenseless, therefore he is no match for the strong forces of the wind. Thus he tries to protect those who are unaware of the severity of the storm. Women, babies clinging on their backs. Did you get that? Just that you did. Now let's see how we would respond to the question that is given on this aspect. A sample body paragraph for the second aspect of the given question. And the second aspect of the given question reads, for one of the poems you must discuss one speaker's reaction to the power and wonder of nature. And the response reads, in the poem God's Grandeur, the speaker's reaction to the power and wonder of nature is quite different from that of the speaker in the poem An African Thunderstorm. In this poem, it is quite apparent that the speaker was awestruck by the power and wonder of nature, so much so that there seems to be a reverent fear. Thus, it is understandable that he would question the fact that mankind has been disobedient in their quest for material gain. Why do men now not wreck his rod? This rhetorical question highlights the fact that the speaker is appalled that men continue to pollute and destroy the environment with their preoccupation with trade, smeared with trade. Despite man's preoccupation, nature remains intact. Thus, the speaker admires nature's resilience. Did you get that? I trust that you did. Question. Selecting your device that you need to comment on, you should ensure that you do the following. 1. Choose a device that you remember well. You must know the name of the device and the appropriate example of this device in the poem as used in the poem. Secondly, you should be able to comment extensively on the effectiveness or suitability of the chosen device. Comment on its appropriateness in terms of what this device denotes as well as what it connotes. There are some examples of devices and commentary on them as it relates to the poems God's Grandeur and of course An African Thunderstorm. Now the first one is the use of the repetition. Generations have trod, have trod, have trod. And we know that repetition is used for emphasis. So this repetition is emphasizing that generations have come and have gone, but nature is never depleted despite man's interference. Okay, and that of course is significant. And then of course you have nature is never spent. That's another example here, and it's a metaphor. Now this metaphor, nature is never spent, implies that nature is never utterly depleted or deleted or utterly destroyed. And I'm sure you got that from the poem God's Grandeur. And then we proceed now to look at An African Thunderstorm. Trees bend to let it pass, and that is a phrase that has been repeated throughout the poem. Now this repetition is emphasizing that the forces or wind was so strong that they, the Africans, had to submit themselves under the dictates of the invaders, their colonizers. And then we had screams and screams of delighted children. This onomatopoeic word, screams, connotes a sense of something that is ominous. Therefore, the expression screams of delighted children is suggesting that what is about to happen will not be pleasurable or joyful. And we saw that in An African Thunderstorm. I just see that this have proven beneficial to you. sample paragraph for the final aspect of this question. And the final aspect of this question reads, finally, for each poem, you must examine one device that each poet uses to portray the power and wonder of nature. And here is the sample response. In the poems, An African Thunderstorm and God's Grandeur, respectively, use various devices to showcase the power and wonder of nature. In the poem An African Thunderstorm, the poet David Rubardi uses repetition to emphasize the power and wonder of nature. The repetitive lines are trees bend to let it pass and wind whistles by. These emphasize the power and wonder of nature in that the wind was so strong that the trees had to bend to let it pass. This imagery conveyed the idea that the Africans had to submit to the dictates of the invaders. The force of the littoral storm as well was so strong that the wind is perceived as whistling because of its intensity. While in the poem God's Grandeur, the poet uses metaphor to highlight the potency of nature. In the metaphoric expression, nature is never spent, the poet implies that nature is indomitable or invincible. Thus, it can never be annihilated or obliterated. It remains a dominant force that can never be erased. Did you get that? I trust that you did.
It's already done. The victory is won. It's already